And here now to break down all the latest developments, Fox 5 political analyst Rick Epps.
Good morning to you, Rick. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Okay, so let's talk about the last 4 days. What has been accomplished?
Well, they have actually had 4 rounds of hostages released. There have been 58 that have been released by Israel and 117 that have been released by Hamas. And they've also been able to get more humanitarian aid into the South region. So there have been some positive steps. I say that with great temperance, but there has been some positive steps. And now we're on to the next phase, which is, as we'll be talking about here in a moment. So,
and the next phase is what, there was that one hiccup on the second day of releases, but you mentioned we've been through now 4 rounds of this. What everybody's talking about, will there be an extension? Will there be a 5th day of releasing of hostages, a 6th day? Is that a possibility or not really?
There are those who think that it's impossible because they say that it doesn't solve what happened on day 1, because the issue still is there.
Yeah.
I personally believe, and I think there are many others who feel the same, that there will be another day, and there will be a day-by-day transition of hostages over the next several days. The problem that I see is that we don't know the state of the hostages. We don't know how many hostages are still alive, and if a significant number are not alive, that could create another situation, particularly with Netanyahu already making comments about what this is going to look like going forward, and that they're not going to stop.
Were you surprised Netanyahu was in Gaza yesterday?
No, and I say that because it's the optic, right? It's the optic of showing his leadership. His leadership has been in trouble, so this is like a very symbolic gesture. First time since 2005. So it's a profound gesture. But there are some in the region who would be very upset about the fact that he was there.
Hey, can we go back to that? Because Netanyahu also, obviously, he's saying that he's open to extend the ceasefire another day for every 10 hostages released. But in the same breath, like right before the whole talk about the ceasefire, he's like, no. I mean, he's so gung-ho about keeping the pressure on Hamas because they want to abolish Hamas. So it's weird because you want to feel hopeful, and then but it's hard to.
Yeah, well, part of it is the fact that there is this reality of 10 at a time. He's already said that regardless of how many we release over the period, the goal is to eradicate Hamas from the region. So in fact, if that is the case, then we have to confront that. Yes, we will take whatever we can get up until the ceasefire road goes away. But once it does, or the truce, I should say, but once it does, then he's already said we're coming back after you. So I think that's why some people don't believe in this long-term resolution.
Because 4 days of peace and ceasefire and exchanging and then Netanyahu makes that statement. It's like, whoa! So the minute this ends, the shelling begins again. I wanted to see if you can explain to us the history behind the ratio here. Now we're seeing 1 Israeli hostage for 3 Palestinian hostages. And in years past, that 1 Israeli soldier, and they gave them, I don't remember the exact number, 10,000 Palestinian prisoners. Explain the history behind that and why it is the way it is.
Well, it's an optic thing, right? Because certainly they recognize that, first of all, the number of Palestinians that have been that are being held hostage, right, versus the number of Israelis and other foreign nationals that have been held hostage is dramatically significant more that are being held by Israel. So when you think about the trade-off is based on a percentage of how many hostages are actually there. And so that's why you see because people have asked, why do we have more people coming back from Israel than we do from from Hamas side, and that's the reason why there's a significant number on the Israeli side.
Can you explain before we get why are there so many Thai prisoners there that are being released? Were they part of what happened on October 7th, or were they just there for some other reason?
That's a good question. They could have, and then no one really knows. They could have been Thai government officials. They could be there for business purposes. There are Thai nationals who reside in that region, who go and travel, who have dual citizenship, depending on their relationships. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons. All kinds of people hanging out in Gaza.
And I wonder then about the Palestinian prisoners as well that are being released in exchange for the hostages. Do you know much about them? I know that some of them, not directly associated with October 7th, some of them have been in prison longer. Do you know anything about them?
Well, it's okay, so the people that they typically will release are the low-risk people first, right? I mean, it's very calculated who you're letting out the door.
Sure.
Just like for Hamas, who they let out the door back to Israel is very calculated. So, when you start looking at high-value targets, right, or high-value detainees, those are the ones who will be coming much later. And Israel will hold those people until they start releasing more high-value Israeli or foreign nationals, whether they be American or other folks, from Hamas. So it is a very calculated game of releasing certain people.
It's all very calculated, like you said. There's optics all over the place here. I want to talk about Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, because he has already stated, and he will speak his mind, as you know. He already stated that Congress should apply conditions on any additional aid package to Israel. Conditions. Explain.
Well, normally when we give aid to our allies, there's always some measure of limited conditions when you're handing money out, right? But this case, he's making a statement that is directly confronting the humanitarian crises, and he's saying, even though he does it in a very Bernie Sanders way, that we should basically not give additional billions of dollars to Israel until we set conditions which may, regarding the humanitarian crises, and getting more help, and getting more aid, and basically saying Israel, slow down.
Do you think the U.S. government, the Biden administration, Bernie Sanders, everyone, or do you think they were taken aback or surprised by the power and the response that Netanyahu had to what happened on October 7th, a complete annihilation or attempt of, to the point where when we had the humanitarian crisis that we're in now, they're like, doesn't matter, we're still going. Seems like the world was surprised by this.
Yeah, which is really kind of strange, because if you look historically, every time that the Palestinian or Hamas, I'll say, has committed an action, the reaction is always 10 times worse.
Correct.
So if they're not aware, then you're going, well, wait a minute, why are you not aware? You should be aware. And God knows people in my area, in the Middle East, specialists, we all recognize what the reality is. So when Bernie says this, in fact, perhaps the 10 hostages release for an extra day may be something that has been pushed by the United States that may be pushing and pressuring Netanyahu regarding this.
Yeah, looking at Gaza, say a truce is reached, or perhaps the war ends. What does life look like in Gaza moving forward?
I think that's a very complicated question, because it's always the question of, is it too little, too late, right? Because what happens in this situation is, okay, say the war ends in a few months, then the morning after, I call it the morning after effect. What happens if you finally eradicate Hamas, you get some kind of government back in place, you don't know what that's going to look like, but then all the people who, almost 15,000 people have been killed already in Gaza. And so the question will be, how many new terrorists have you created as a byproduct of that? That's the danger when you go this route, because everyone you killed potentially could be 2 or 3 additional new terrorists, because they will have long memories. And then if that's the case, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy and a cycle of unending conflict.
It's a cycle that they can't seem to break out of here. Gaza is shrinking. Gaza is shrinking, so what they're going to go back to is going to be how much smaller than what they had, which was already so densely populated. How does that go on?
Exactly. Well, plus, and then having a security state, because Israel's not going to let Gaza ever be what Gaza was before, because they're not going to let the risk of security risk exist anymore.
Which leads to the question that nobody has the answer to, so what happens and what is next?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, what happens next is going to be, I would argue, a continued state of, tense relations, and probably going forward there'll be some terrorist acts and it's just going to be, it's an unfortunate reality to say that, but that's in fact where we find ourselves when the morning after.
Rick Epps, we thank you as always for the insight on this. Always very interesting.
Great to see both of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.